I would never have thought in a million freaking years that I would prefer a show based on George R.R. Martin's lackluster book, Fire and Blood, over a show that's based on Tolkien's Legendarium, even one that's loosely based on The Fall of Numenor, Forging of the Great Rings, and War of the Last Alliance, but here we are. What's up everybody, welcome back to The Far Side. Today let's break down the House of the Dragon episode 5. Don't get me wrong, the Song of Ice and Fire, the series of books the Game of Thrones show was based on, was masterful, but leagues above the self-indulgent textbook narrative of Fire and Blood. Going through it was harder than sandpaper on bare ass. I would have preferred the Winds of Winter, but we all know that's not gonna happen anytime soon. Why? Well, that's not lucrative material right now. This show does not redeem Game of Thrones Season 8, not by a long shot, but I think it's still superior to other fantasy shows. I'm looking at you, Rings of Power. If you're new to the channel, we cover Marvel, DC, Dragons, Rings, and Star Wars, so pretty much everything under the sun. We're as green as the Queen's dress, but unlike Daemon, we're not assholes, so please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate your support. The 5th episode is titled We Light the Way, which is the motto of House Hightower. Hightower itself is a castle with a giant-ass lighthouse on top of it, so yeah. In a way, it also refers to Queen Alicent Hightower. Actress Emily Carey will be playing the character for the last time. We will have a time jump of about 10 years at the start of episode 6, and this episode largely sets everything up for the event called Dance of the Dragon. So far, the time jumps have not been too jarring for me. I understand why from a story perspective and that this is more of a generational conflict, but I'm not sure how this will turn out in episode 6, where half of the cast changes and basically we get to see new faces. The episode starts in Runestone in the Vale. Daemon Targaryen, played by Matt Smith, largely known for his role as the Doctor, appears out of nowhere to visit his wife, Lady Rhea Royce, whom he calls his bronze in mockery of the color of their armor. Daemon hates it here, as evidenced by all the sheep comments. He actively avoids the place, preferring the brothels of King's Landing. Apparently they skipped the honeymoon and she knows all about the sheep jokes, which might tell us of possible spies in the capital. This would cause problems for Daemon later on. Anyway, she realizes why he's there and starts reaching for her bow, but too late. She falls off her horse and breaks her back. Daemon then picks up a rock and finishes the job. This is a departure from the source material. The manner of her death might be the same, but Daemon had nothing to do with it. Though he was very interested in the inheritance, they didn't have any children, so he stands to inherit the entirety of her lands and castles, which might be his intention in the first place. I'm sure her cousin will have something to say about that. We'll meet him later on in the episode. We move on to King Viserys, played by actor Paddy Considine, and Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen on a boat to Driftmark, seat of House Velaryon. After a disastrous matchmaking attempt by the king, he gives up, says what the heck, and she was allowed to choose her own husband. Hence her tour of the Stormlands, but she gets bored and returns to daddy empty-handed. So understandably, the king is quite pissed.
Oh, well then you should not deprive yourself.
To make things worse, Daemon seduced her in a place of less repute that left many questioning her morals. Turns out he just wanted her for himself. The king exiles him instead. Her claim to the throne was initially weakened by the birth of Prince Aegon II, infant son of the king and Alicent Hightower. Many believe that it will lead to civil war, everybody except the king, who just wants everybody to get along. But poor King Viserys, his condition is getting worse due to some unknown illness. Even his maester is like, what the is happening? Melted blades and swords of the Iron Throne definitely doesn't do that. In the books, he was fat and stumbles on a jagged edge. Another way to look at it is that the throne itself is shunning him and a form of omen on his rule. This is another departure from the source material. This happened to another ruler altogether, so I'm interested to know where they're going with this. All of this is the final bid of a dying man to secure his legacy. He later contemplates this as he lay helpless, talking to his hand Ser Lyonel Strong. As king, he continued the prosperous and peaceful reign of Jaehaerys the Old. He regrets not being tested though, as his forebears were. Moving on to the Red Keep, former hand of the king, Otto Hightower, played by Rhys Ifans, have been fired from his position for overstepping and accusing the Princess Rhaenyra. He now speaks to his daughter before leaving. He said Alicent allowed for this to happen, a decision she regrets, but at the same time, she's naive enough to believe the princess would never lie to her. Before he leaves, he tells her to prepare Aegon to rule Cornwall and that Rhaenyra will endanger her children to secure her throne. The king arrives in high tide, the new seat of House Velaryon built by Corlys the Sea Snake, the wealthiest man in Westeros at the time. Driftmark, as the island is named, has a tendency of driftwood washing up on its shores, and nicely depicted here by a real-life island castle in Cornwall, St. Michael's Mount. But instead of the customary greeting to the king, Laenor Velaryon, his daughter, all grown up, arrives instead to greet the royal party, which is a huge deal. The king allows the slight to happen so he can push forward with his proposal. He finds Corlys waiting in the Hall of Nine, again kind of being a douchebag for letting the king walk all the way with his condition. I like the depiction of the driftwood throne here as well, as an amalgamation of different pieces. The king mentions how impressive the halls of high tide are, filled with various trinkets. The king moves forward with his proposal to wed Princess Rhaenyra with Laenor, to unite both old pillars of Valyria, as he says. In its history, in fact, the Velaryons were the first to arrive in Westeros from old Valyria. They have since become one of the strongest allies of the crown. They have the largest fleet, and they have always served as master of ships in the king's small council. But bad blood extends from his wife being passed over in the Great Council of 101 in favor of Viserys. Plus, the king denied the marriage when his first wife died. Corlys leaves the council to his own devices, and here we are. But not so fast. The Velaryons now question the succession after the marriage, and if the children will have Velaryon last names. The king then tells them they will be Velaryons at birth, but once they ascend the throne, they will revert to Targaryen. They agree and everybody's happy. If you ask me, last names are not the main issue though, as we'll discover later in the show. Moving on to Laenor and Rhaenyra walking along the shore, they discuss their future and strike a deal regarding their respective tastes. A deep cut to the book's Grand Maester Melos saying he doesn't like fish, but when it's served, he would eat it. TLDR of it is they agree to having an open marriage. Next we see them both tell their respective paramours. Laenor is with Joffrey Lonmouth, known as the Knight of Kisses, who thinks it's a pretty sweet deal. Princess Rhaenyra tells Ser Criston Cole he wants them to run off and get married. The princess wants to continue what they began. Ser Cole then apparently can't take no for an answer because he broke his I can't get laid oath for her and walks out.
Ser Criston.
Queen Alicent looks at the weirwood heart tree of the private godswood in the Red Keep, which I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be an oak tree in the books, but we are introduced to Lord Larry Strong, played by actor Matthew Needham. He becomes the new master of whisperers, just like Varys, a very curious character and has a huge part to play in the coming conflict. He's not known to speak much as he puts it, but when he does, you can bet it's to further his agenda. He innocently inquires as to the princess's condition. He lets slip the special tea made for the princess by the Grand Maester secretly from the king, which would mean she lied to her face about keeping her maidenhood. Upon the king's return, she called for Ser Criston Cole in the hopes of finding out the truth. As her sworn protector, he would know what happened. Ser Cole, still feeling guilt over what he had done, confesses to her and asks for a quick end. She is completely shocked by the revelation, which not only means she was lied to, but her father was telling the truth all along. Next, the Velaryon fleet, bearing the seahorse of their house, sails to King's Landing for the royal wedding celebrations. Along with them came Meleys, the Red Queen, Dragon of Princess Rhaenys, and Seasmoke, ridden by Laenor. We saw a bit of him in action during the War of the Stepstones. Among the esteemed attendees, the Lannister twins, Lord Jason was one of the contenders for Princess Rhaenyra's hand. He even noted the Queen's absence here. Hobart Hightower, brother to Otto, Sir Gerald Royce, also in attendance, cousin to the late Rhea Royce. Velaryons arrive for the celebrations. Daemon arrives and is welcomed by the king. Well, despite his actions, Viserys has a soft spot for his brother. The king started his speech but was cut short by the arrival of the queen. Alicent Hightower arrives in green as a symbol of war. It's on. And in case you missed it, Larys says it out loud. She calls the princess stepdaughter and kisses the king. It might be a missed opportunity if they don't revisit this within the season, but the two factions in the Civil War are referred to by their colors, the greens and the black. This symbolizes the start of the initial Cold War. The seeds have been planted and both sides will soon look to their allies for support. Sir Gerald makes an accusation about the manner of his cousin's death. Daemon, on the other hand, wants the inheritance and tells him of his intentions to fly to the Eyrie to petition the Lady Jane. Daemon makes a move for Laena Velaryon, saying she's almost as pretty as her brother, which was actually said by Mushroom, the king's personal jester, also one of the book's sources. Joffrey Lonmouth tells Laenor that Criston Cole is a paramour based on his facial expression. He then proceeds to talk to the knight about keeping their secret. secret. Again, we see Harwin Strong, son of the Hand of the King, here dancing with the princess. He was considered to be the strongest man, earning him the name Breakbones. Daemon, still after Rhaenyra, interrupts their dance and starts confronting his niece in the middle of the banquet. But the commotion was started by a different pair altogether. Criston Cole attacks Joffrey, and by the end, yet another Joffrey bites the dust in a celebration. As episode closes, they proceed with the marriage, attended by a select few. The queen stops Criston Cole from stabbing himself in front of the weirwood. We'll see why that's important later in the series. And lastly, the king collapses. Don't worry, he's not dead. Again, the shock and awe can't compare to the likes of the Red Wedding, but there's a lot going on here. If you haven't read the books, you better brace for what's coming.
Throw me a frickin' bone here.
I think they succeeded in setting up the coming conflict. They pretty much changed all the dynamics in the show. Definitely looking forward to the next episode, but again, expect changes on the actors. All teens will be replaced by adult actors as we jump a number of years in the future. Let me know what you guys thought of the episode. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate your support of the channel. Thank you for watching. Keep rocking out there and see you on the next one.